Well, hello, Julie McGuire.
Hi.
So excited. I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to the church. They already know you on stage. Many people know you've been around since the very beginning.
Yeah.
But now, as of this month, you officially joined our staff as the director of Celebrate Recovery, which I am so pumped about. I remember 11 years or so ago, getting on a plane, flying to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Pastor Jeff and I went to a Celebrate Recovery conference because we were passionate about seeing people find freedom, and
Yes.
we're really excited about what God is doing. Can't wait to hear more about what God is doing, but I just want to say thank you for joining the team. Can't wait to see what God does through you, and excited to talk a little bit more about Celebrate Recovery today.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm super excited to officially be on staff, and I've just always been so grateful for the heart that you and Jeff and the leadership at the church set from the beginning about the broken being welcome and no one being condemned or judged here. And Celebrate Recovery, really the easy answer is it's a Christ-centered 12-step recovery program. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes about what that really means. Yes, it's a program where people come in with any kind of hurt, hang up, or habit. Oftentimes, I think of it as just something that's separating them from God, some kind of pain, some kind of struggle. And we do things to self-medicate or cover up, all kinds of different issues. We can medicate in lots and lots of ways, but we all have these issues that the medication or whatever we're doing to cover up is just a symptom of a deeper issue. So basically, we just want people to know that there's all kinds of different reasons to come to Celebrate Recovery. Of course, substance abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, that's a key reason. That's what started me there on that journey. But what kept me there was my codependent behaviors and my bitterness and my anger and my controlling, people-pleasing behaviors. So that's become something that a lot of people are really looking for freedom from.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit about what it is, but I think people make assumptions that may not be true of what Celebrate Recovery is. So what are some things that Celebrate Recovery is not?
Yeah, that's a great question because we're not professional counselors, we're not that.
Yeah.
We are for professional counseling and doctors helping, and we have a lot of people that struggle with different, maybe some different mental issues, some different psychological things, depression, and we love working in conjunction with those plans that they're on. So we're not that, but we're a community of people that are like-minded believers who know that the solution to the pain that we're suffering and coming into freedom is Jesus and community and a 12-step program. So we're not there to fix everybody. We're there for people to come and deal with their own stuff.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of great things out there in the community, in the world to help. But really, what I love about Celebrate Recovery, and obviously we're a church, is we know that the center of it has to be a relationship with Jesus.
Absolutely.
And I think that we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's the big differentiator between a lot of other programs for people to experience freedom.
Absolutely.
And that's not a knock on any of those, but we really believe if you're ever going to get truly free, it's got to be through a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Well, and that's when I was in recovery in the beginning, I struggled with alcohol. It became something that was taking over my life. So I went into the secular program, which was amazing and brought me to a place of recovery. What I found was that sobriety wasn't enough for me.
I love that.
I had a relationship with the Lord that I was longing for. So instead of saying, hey, my name's Julie and I'm an alcoholic, which identified me as an alcoholic, I loved that Celebrate Recovery said, hey, I'm a believer in Jesus, and I struggle with fill in the blank. And that changed it for me. So I just don't think sobriety's enough.
Yeah, I love that. I love that phrase. And I've heard it for a long time. And don't miss that. Sobriety is not enough. You can get clean and still not have purpose in your life.
Right.
You can get free from an addiction, but not be free spiritually.
Yes.
Right? And so that's what I love about Celebrate Recovery is it's both and.
Yes.
But there's so much misunderstanding. We live in one of the largest, communities in the nation of overdose and heroin addiction.
Ohio's number 2 in the nation.
Number 2 in the nation.
Yeah.
Right. And I know even Warren County is one of the highest in the state and in the nation. So this is something that people hear a lot. They hear about addiction and struggle, but I think there's so many misconceptions and misunderstandings of what that is. So just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to.
Because I think it will help people understand that, sometimes we have labels and we have categories and we write people off and we put them in the forgotten and the filth,
Yep.
and they're not worthy. But God views every single person as worthy of his love. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I think in the society calls it those people.
Absolutely.
and I love being one of those people, for the record. So, addiction is a scary thing. I come from a family of addiction on both sides of my family, all the way back generations, became it myself, have struggled with it, had been in relationships with people. It's a generational issue. I believe that addiction to things, like alcohol and drugs, this is something that we do inherit. This can be passed from generation to generation. These other behaviors in codependency, these are learned behaviors.
Right.
So there is a difference. We talk about all of these behaviors in Celebrate Recovery, but one of the misconceptions I think that people have is that, particularly with the heroin epidemic and the opioid problems we have, that these people can just say, hey, I'll just quit. And it's just not that easy. I know there's a lot of talk out there about, should we Narcan people again? Should we, Narcan's something that resuscitates someone.
Yeah.
I would venture to say to people, if that was your daughter or your spouse or your mom, wouldn't you Narcan them again? Because we can't help them get well if they're not alive.
No
That's
doubt.
the key.
That's it.
We just want them to be able to get here. We know the solution, and we have many people that have struggled with, hard addictions like heroin that are here today. Moms of 4, she just got her coin for 4 years of sobriety Friday night. And that'll make me emotional,
Absolutely.
We have a young man who was literally dead and Narcaned again, and he led worship last Friday at our CR.
Oh, amazing.
And that's after a year and a half of sobriety.
Right.
I mean, this is the solution. So it's not that they can just say, the just say no thing, it doesn't work. But we can give them a solution if they're willing.
Absolutely.
And you do have to be willing.
Yep.
So the steps say, became willing, to let God and this community come in alongside me and help me to get well. So if they're willing to do that, anybody can get well. And getting well means healed by Jesus.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think sometimes for people, and most of our church knows my background, and I wasn't a Christ follower until I was in my 20s, and I had a 7-year journey of abusing lots of different things.
Yeah.
Myself being the number one thing.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people, they don't realize what's happening inside of someone when they're really struggling and battling an addiction. So they make judgments about those people and about their character because they've developed this habit or this hurt or this hang up. You know, and I think that we as a faith community, if we're really going to be for freedom as a church, and we're going to be for Cincy, then there's got to always be room for broken people.
Absolutely.
We've said it before, that we are ordinary people seeking extraordinary lives, and they are just as capable of experiencing that as you and me.
Yeah. And just because you've been down further doesn't mean that you can't get up. But boy, when you get up, your story is impactful.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of misunderstanding that people are lazy, or people don't care, or people that have addiction, are in that box. And it's just not truthful. I'm not saying that they don't need, our program tells you to own your stuff. It's a self-examining program. You come in, you admit your part, you get help, you become accountable to other people. And this isn't just for people with substance. This is for, hey, do you have a porn addiction? Do you have a food addiction? Are you just bitter and mean to your family? Are you angry? What is your issue? Codependency manifests itself in all kinds of different ways. Anxiety, depression, anger, these are big ones. And we've seen so much redemption in families. I mean, husbands and wives.
Tell me a little bit, because I know there's so many assumptions. I just had a conversation 2 weeks ago with someone around this issue of codependency, because CR is much more than just substances and hard drugs. It's not just alcohol and drugs. It's much more than that. And someone was like, oh, I just thought it was for drugs. It's way more than that.
It is.
And it's about getting free.
It is.
And codependency is, man, it's kept so many people in bondage for so long. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and maybe share a story without names, of course, of how God's done that?
And it's affected my own story so much. Codependency is really, it's a broad term, so for me to be able to explain it in this is difficult, but me putting other people's feelings ahead of my own, me not taking care of myself, me wanting, one of our human needs is the need for control. and
Absolutely.
learning that we aren't in control. God's in control. That's hard, especially
It
for
is.
us overachievers.
Right.
I sought the love of my Father through overachieving because I wasn't receiving it. So that's where I got that people pleasing. I'm going to be the best at everything and do everything. And then when you fail, because no one's perfect.
Right.
So our perfectionism, we can even get to the place where we don't do anything because we know we can't be perfect. I mean, codependency can rear its head in so many ways, and putting people's lives before your own, enabling others' esteem, the addiction to approval. These are things that really, this stuff can kill people too.
Absolutely.
It's detrimental to families. We have what happens a lot is, so we have an example of a family, a husband and wife come in. The wife's coming in because she wants a divorce and she wants to get through it and be in community with women. The man's coming in because he's trying to save his marriage, right? It could be that she's angry, he's maybe doing some things he shouldn't be doing. We have a men's integrity group that
Absolutely.
covers that. Sexual addiction, yes, but just being a good man,
Absolutely.
right? So they come in, and our suggestion is always go through the steps. Give it some time before you make a huge decision in your life, because you need to make good decisions with the Lord. You
doubt.
need to let him look at you, see if this is something that can be healed, because we're for marriage.
Yes,
Not
we are.
saying all relationships make it. They don't.
Right.
Both people have
But
to be
there
willing.
are genuine, real stories
Lots
of
of
God
them.
stepping in through Celebrate Recovery
Yep.
and saving marriages,
Yes.
saving families.
Yes.
It's happening right here in our
Absolutely.
church, and our body needs to know that. And,
Absolutely.
And one of the byproducts, I have a good friend who's a psychologist, and we were talking about codependency, and one of the byproducts, you mentioned it, but is it leads to anxiety. I mean, like real deal anxiety,
Yes.
and it can lead to depression.
Yes.
And people think that it's anxiety and depression, and they never make that connection.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of what
Yeah.
if you are struggling with codependency and someone's sitting here today who's struggling with that,
Yeah.
it's a great avenue. It's a
Yeah.
great avenue.
Going
to
through the
get help.
steps, just getting that, going through the steps is a process.
Right.
We're all works in progress. It is a process. It's not a quick fix. This becomes a way of life because we unlearn those behaviors that cause us to react the way we do. We learn that we can control the way that we react to things and people, and also that it's perfectly fine for me to tell you what I want, what I need, and what I like, without
Yeah.
me thinking that you're going to be mad about it.
Right.
Which I know that may sound strange, but that's how I lived for a long time, thinking, oh, I can't say that because that person will be mad. Not
Well, I say
true.
this all the time. We've all got junk in our trunks,
Right.
and we got to retrain our brains.
Yes.
We really do, and we can do that through the power of the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
We're not conformed
Right.
any longer to the pattern of this world, but
Right.
transformed by the renewing of our mind. And I love that about the step process.
Yeah, he can make all things new.
Absolutely.
100%. I get to see the fruits and the stories and people's redemption over and over and over. So I get really excited about it because I see all these couples that their marriages have been redeemed. I see
No
people
doubt.
that were dead and now are alive, literally,
Amen.
spiritually, and emotionally.
Right.
So it's a crazy process, but it's amazing to watch. We call it a checkup from the neck up.
I love that. You might hear me use that again. It's totally stealing that.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just about marriages either, or individuals.
Right.
It's about families and
Absolutely.
what God, just so you know, and this is not bragging on Julie, it's just saying, yay, God. Last Friday night, 200 people were at Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
And a lot of those are kids, and now even teenagers. So tell us a little bit about, this isn't babysitting. This is part of the Celebrate Recovery program. So tell us a little bit about how Celebrate Recovery is impacting kids and teenagers as well.
Yeah, and so we refer to it lovingly as pre-covery. There, we have a program, and it's a curriculum from Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery does a great job supporting us. John Baker, the founder of it, has given us a lot of materials to help us along the path. So I love the design of, it's not childcare, but from ages toddler all the way up, there's curriculum. So, for example, if your child is a third grader and they're in celebration place, that would be our, from 0 to 6th grade is celebration place. They're learning, if I'm teaching the adults on denial, the first step, how to come out of denial and just say, hey, I have something I need to work on. We're talking to the kids about what that looks like on their level. And then we have what is teen recovery. So that's the 7th grade through 12th grade. And we just started that program. And we talk the same way, but in a more mature level,
Right.
obviously. But this makes it so the entire family comes together and they can understand that it's okay for me to say, this is how I'm feeling, or this is okay for me to say, I'm struggling with this in a safe environment. You know, we have guidelines that are really clear about keeping things confidential and making sure people feel safe and know that as they're expressing their feelings in these groups, that what's said here stays here.
Yeah.
But when you can come together as a family and you've all learned the same thing and you realize that it's biblical. We always talk about the biblical comparisons. The Beatitudes are based on Matthew 5.
Right.
You know, those are our 8 principles in Celebrate Recovery. So when families come together, it's life-changing. We want to break chains generationally. So we feel like we have to reach every single person in the family.
And it's working. It's working already. I just had a conversation this past Sunday. I haven't even told you this yet, but one of our students who's struggling with abuse, substance abuse, came up to me and said, hey, Pastor Paul, can you pray for me? I went to Celebrate Recovery last weekend and I'm 5 days clean. And 5 days turns into 10 days.
Yes.
10 days turns into, it can, if you do the work, turn into 10 years in the rest of your life. So God is already working in the lives of our kids and our students. And, you know, even as I'm preaching today, you know, freedom, it begins with Jesus, it continues with Jesus, and it finishes with Jesus. And I know that's your heart really for this ministry is because of what Jesus has done in your life. So why don't you, as we just kind of wind things down, tell us how God's worked in your life and why you're so passionate about Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I started out, you know, with a lot of addiction in my family. And, you know, I was a teen when I thought, this is horrible, I don't like my life. And I didn't have a place to go where I could say to other people, my family is so jacked up. I just didn't have that, which is why I'm so passionate about them having a place to come. And so I did, and then I started experimenting. But when I drank, I was off to the races because I inherited that propensity for being an alcoholic. And so alcohol took me to places that I never wanted to go. Ended up being married to an alcoholic, ended up just living that lifestyle. When I got sober, I was, you know, I knew Jesus, but I like to say I was saved, but I wasn't serious.
Yeah.
And when I got sober and started working the program in Celebrate Recovery, then I was like, oh, this is the freedom I was looking for. And it radically changed my life. And I worked a long time to, you know, make my family see what recovery was doing for me just by trying to set that example. We can't change their behavior, but boy, I can change mine. And that's what I did. And it's been a long process for me to get to the place where I am today and feel free from all of those burdens. But I mean, one of my favorite scriptures in Psalms is that it says God snapped those chains. Like, that's what I see
So
every Friday. That's what I feel and what I see and what I pray for is snap those chains. And that's what he's done in my life. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times people come in for somebody else and stuff like that, you know. But they find that when they get there, they're like, oh, maybe this is for me too, you know.
I think there's a lot more chain snapping that needs to take place in our body and in this city. And that's why we're for freedom and we're really for Celebrate Recovery. So we're for you and for your leadership in this ministry. Can't wait to see what God does. And I think my greatest hope for this interview and why we're sharing it with the congregation is that there's someone out there who needs to realize sobriety's not enough. I love that. There's someone out there who they think they need to fix their friend, their son, their daughter, their partner, their wife, their husband. But really it might start with them. And I know that's your prayer and our prayer is that someone takes that step. And we can't promise it's going to work, but what we can do is we can say Jesus is the center, he's the solution. And if you work the process, you can experience freedom.
Yeah, Jesus is for you.
He
is for you. He is with you. It's settled. We know that, right?
I know that what God has done today has moved the Holy Spirit is here. We believe that even through a video interview. And there's someone sitting out there that knows that sobriety's not enough, like you said, and they need to take a step. How can they get plugged in? to what God is doing at Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah, well, I would just say to that person, just allow yourself to just be a little vulnerable and be willing for a minute and take a challenge. I like to tell people, if you're gonna come, just give it 6 weeks. Try for 6 weeks. If you don't wanna be there, you can take your misery and take it back home, and it's perfectly fine.
I love that.
Yeah, so we start on a Friday night. We feed everybody. We have fellowship at 6:45, and then we do large group where everybody goes in together. We worship together. We have a teaching or a testimony. You'll hear great testimonies of people and how they have had life change, one day at a time after one day at a time,
right,
which makes into a lot of times years and years, which is great. So you get that community together, and then we break out into gender-specific and topic-specific groups. So the food group and the men's integrity group and the substance abuse and all the different codependency groups. Those break out separately, and that's a safe and really confidential place where you can really talk about what's been going on in your life this week, and that's where you just make all this community. So that happens until about 9 o'clock, and then usually around 9 o'clock we then linger for a while still, and we clean up the church and hang out and fellowship, and it's just like a family.
Friday night at Rivers Crossing.
It is.
It's a happening place.
Yeah, we call it our forever family because
That's right.
we really are like family. And yeah, just if you're feeling the little tug, I would say just come. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk to anybody to get permission. Just come, and there will be lots and lots of happy, welcoming people that will be so glad you're there, and they'll just show you where to go. And yeah, it really is the best place to be on a Friday night.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me a bunch of one-liners I'm totally stealing for all my future sermons. And just thank you for the heart and your leadership for this ministry. I can't wait to see what God does.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.